Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Prepare Consumer Food Centre webinar. So my name is Carol Griffin and I work in Teagasc Food Research Centre in Ashtown in Dublin. I work in food product development and sensory analysis. So we would cater for large and small food businesses. Our webinar series is delivered fortnightly on Tuesday mornings from 9 a.m. And over the coming months, we will be bringing you a range of topics of general interest to the food sector, highlighting the expertise and services we offer to Irish food companies. Today's webinar is focusing on the topics of food innovation in response to COVID-19 and how the Prepare Consumer Food Centre can help. This session will provide insight into how the Prepared Consumer Food Centre can support the food sector in Ireland in their response to this unprecedented challenges. And our speaker today is Shay Hannon. So I'll ask Shay to turn on his video. If we can.
Morning, everyone.
Shay, I just can't see your video at the moment. There you are. And Shay is the Prepared Consumer Food Manager in Ashtown, and he's over 11 years experience working in food sector in senior roles in quality and technical, and also research and development. This webinar will take about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have presentations, and then we're going to have some Q&A from our panel. So you'll also see Ciara McDonough here. Ciara's our Head of Food Industry Development in Teagasc, and Ciara and myself will be on the questions and answer panel at the end. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A box, and you can enter your questions there throughout Shay's presentation. So please do so, and we'll handle those questions at the end. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, this webinar is being recorded. So it will be available on the Teagasc YouTube channel afterwards. And finally, I'd like to thank you for your interest and for your participation during this morning's talk. And I'll now hand over to Shay.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Carol, for the introduction. I hope you're all well and returning to some degree of normality after the last difficult number of months. This morning, as Carol mentioned, I'll kick off our food industry development series of webinars. So this morning, I'm going to start with an insight into how COVID-19 has affected the food industry in Ireland. And I'm going to discuss how, within the Teagasc Consumer Food Centre, we can help Irish food businesses in this difficult time. So I'd just like you to cast your minds back, if you could, to pre-COVID-19. And to be fair, things were progressing quite well, particularly within the Prepared Consumer Food Centre. In fact, exports were up 2% year on year, 2018-2019, standing at approximately 2.66 billion at the end of 2019. It is worth noting that the sector in general, so the agri-food sector, in 2018, our total exports amounted to 13.6 billion. Now, this is a key figure because it was up 64% since 2010. So if you cast your minds back, that was at the turn when we came over our last economic downturn. And it does provide some positivity that over the next number of years, we can turn things around. Again, exports in this sector are very dependent on the UK and will continue to do so. In fact, we foresee at the moment 66% of exports will continue to go to the UK, even with the downturn of Brexit. While the sector was performing well, it did face a degree of uncertainty, in particular Brexit, as I mentioned, and Mercosur discussions. However, it could be argued that the preparations for Brexit could in fact help us come out of COVID-19. One of the hardest hit areas really, and for anyone today who works in the sector, was food service. It is foreseen that it will take some time for this area to recover. There's been a decline in revenue and coupled with increased costs in an area that works in particularly tight margins, is effectively eroded profits for some organisations. While that may be the case for food service, some areas did see a surge in demand for the products, which was quite interesting at the start of COVID-19. So panic buying was a catalyst for this initial surge. Over the course of COVID-19, we've seen an increased demand for certain products. So as we went from a panic buying pattern, we now are moving into a reaction phase, and we will, in the order of coming weeks, move into a planning phase. As the transition occurs, we'll have to put in place and consider the long-term impacts of COVID-19 on the industry. So, challenging times ahead indeed. The short to medium-term outlook for the industry poses many challenges. So really, it's innovative. We're looking for companies to be as innovative and creative as possible, and to give a lot of companies their credit, they have managed it quite well. One of the areas companies are looking at the moment in terms of SKU rationalization. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you remember, you cast your back to marketing, the Pareto principle, 80% of your sales come from 20% of your products. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing that companies are streamlining their product offering. Of course, staff problems, which result from reduced working hours, split shifts, loss of jobs in some companies, are all additional problems. And again, just a general sense of uneasiness amongst people. Of course, we're seeing with some companies, there's going to be a decrease in capital expenditure, which may have some long-term impacts in terms of equipment and machine purchasing. So really, the bottom line is there is going to be a loss in margin and some short and long-term effects of that. One of the most worrying and concerning points from a Teagasc perspective, though, is the decrease in new product development. And that's really what I want to speak to you this morning in terms of how we can help. So, future planning. What do we need to do really to come out of this? So companies need to start thinking ahead with a positive outlook. Online sales have helped a lot of companies. I know in particular 2 companies I spoke with, online sales effectively saved their business. So companies need to embrace online sales, and if they are selling online, continue to develop that area for sales. Again, companies need to look at what does the consumer want. Now, this can be a double-edged sword. What a consumer necessarily needs and wants today might not necessarily be what they need and want tomorrow or over the coming months. So it's really keeping up to date on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis. Some short-term impacts, and we've seen this before. The beast from the east, if people cast their mind back, we've seen a panic buying in bread, and we did see this with COVID-19 as well. I can't explain why people bought toilet paper in such a large amount, but we did see some panic buying in food at the start. And really what we've seen was people they stocked up on products, so longer shelf life products, frozen products at the start of COVID-19. As we move through them, people move to, I suppose, convenience on the go foods. So really what we're asking companies to do is look at their innovation pathway. Innovation does not necessarily mean radical reformulation. It can be quite simple. It can be a tweak in packaging, tweak in production, or using a substitute ingredient. So, this slide, courtesy of Puree, and it's part of their future proofing toolkit, which is available online, and it's suggested people take a look at. Quite detailed, quite informative. So, just if I cast your attention to the top right-hand quadrant in green, really what this shows is the mass changes that, through the research in Puree, they think that people will keep on board over the coming months as a result of COVID-19. Some of these, I suppose, items which Puree have looked at are cooking food from scratch. So obviously a lot more people are working from home at the moment. A lot more people are eating together with their family. So these are key turning points which will continue to develop over the coming months. One of the key areas, though, is eating healthier for improved immunity. And that is one key fact that Puree, and through a lot of research we're reading at the moment, we're going to see ongoing. So people eating healthier diets to improve their immune system so that they won't obviously get viruses or infections. So consumer habits, and again, moving on from that Puree data, what will a work from home culture mean? Is more people eating from home? Is it more people studying their food, or is it more people studying from scratch? So this will only start to really see light over the next number of weeks and months as to how that's going to look like. Again, it was interesting to see the demand for longer shelf life products at the start of lockdown, but as we move through lockdown, this changed convenience and food to go products. So whether people maybe got tired of cooking at home or wanted a more premium offering or wanted comfort food. Certainly there has been increased focus on the use of technology. And we're going to see that that is going to be a continuing trend. And just from speaking to a lot of consumers, they've said they've actually shopped online for the first time during the lockdown and found it quite an easy experience. So we are going to see a continuation of that over the next few months. So I'd like to talk to you on something that companies will really have to consider, not just because of COVID-19, but in general, is the concept of a sustainable food system. So now more than ever, we need to ensure that all future business planning incorporates a sustainable food system. Now, this really focuses on 3 key pillars. So people, how do we provide a safe workplace? How do we promote the safe health of our workers and ensure a good quality of life all around? A transparent food system, a safe food system. So we don't want another scandal coming out of COVID-19. The industry simply just could not deal with it. Again, the environment. It's vital that we ensure a sustainable food system. Populations are growing, climates are changing, and we need to review our current practices from farm to fork and right through to see how we handle our waste. The idea of a circular economy, and just if I explain that in a little bit more detail, a circular economy is an economic system really that's aimed at eliminating waste and continual use of resources. So a fantastic example I came across recently was a sugar beet plant in Wissington in UK, which was part of the British Sugar Group. So really since the mid-1920s, this group operated in the production of sugar, produced approximately 400,000 tons of sugar a year, but 3.5 million tons of their, let's say, output was going as waste. The team at Wissington sat down 10, 12 years ago and evaluated their operation, really to see what could they do with this waste, 3.5 million tons of waste. The result now is that the factory just doesn't produce sugar, but it produces 12 different saleable products, from valuable chemicals to food and feed for animals and also humans. It also is the first factory in the UK where they have set up a bioethanol plant, which produces 55,000 tons of renewable fuel each year. So that's quite an interesting example of how a company can move within a circular economy. And finally, economic, and it's really bottom line in every sense of the word. So how can businesses continue to grow, make a profit, and do so efficiently? So it's worth noting in the context of planning within the EU that the European Green Deal, which sets out really to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. It maps a new sustainable growth strategy to improve people's health. As part of the European Green Deal, the farm to fork strategy at the heart of this. So in particular, the farm to fork strategy addresses sustainable food systems. The links really between healthy people, healthy societies, and of course, all to provide a healthy planet. The COVID-19 pandemic in particular has underlined the importance of a robust and resilient food system, and something that we'll really have to think about over the coming years. Not only COVID-19, but really, I suppose, increasing resurgence of droughts, floods, forest fires are a constant reminder that our food system really is under threat and it needs to be more sustainable and resilient. Again, COVID-19 has brought up questions about supply chains, the difficulty in supply chains, and really we're seeing some consumers are calling for shorter supply chains, and that's intensified during the COVID-19 outbreak. So the Prepared Consumer Food Centre, and that's really what I'd like to speak to you today on how we can help. So just to give you a brief background, the Prepared Consumer Food Centre was set up in late 2017, really from a call from this very diverse industry, prepared consumer food sector. So all manner of foods fit within this category. So set up in late 2017, funding from Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, and it has allowed Teagasc, allowed us really to acquire state-of-the-art equipment, which is now housed in Ashtown on site. So Teagasc researchers work in conjunction, myself included, with food business on projects, and they can be supported through organisations such as Enterprise Ireland and Science Foundation Ireland, who we work quite closely with. It can be simple as a company coming in to use our test kitchen, just a space really for innovation. And we've seen a lot of that recently, where companies would just simply require a space due to social distancing on their own sites. or it could be as complex as a company coming in to do a full-scale project that could take a number of months. So really, we're a one-stop shop for food product development and research. So just to give you, I suppose, a little more information how the Prepare Consumer Centre is set up. So really, we've split it into 5 key pillars. First, nutrition analysis and quality. We have a dedicated nutritional lab on site, and this goes from basic nutritional analysis right up to more detailed analysis. We have space for food innovation and product development, so right through from test kitchen, through to pilot processing plant, and then through to packaging. We have labs in advanced processing technology, and we have acquired equipment in this area, quite an interesting area, novel, new technology. We also have sensory analysis and quality on site. So we have sensory booths set up and a dedicated sensory analysis team, sensory scientists working with companies and carrying out consumer sensory trials. We also have dedicated food safety labs on site. And as part of this, we have a dedicated Prepare Consumer Food Centre lab, which looks at shelf life and extending shelf life. So who do we support? Well, the answer is everyone across the width and breadth of the food industry, from entrepreneurs to SMEs, right up to large companies. But we do so in very different and diverse ways. So entrepreneurs might come to us, for example, and need help and guidance on setting up their food business, and we provide the knowledge and know-how to do so. SMEs might require information or might require help on a particular problem or project, and we can tailor their needs to do so. And large companies might simply require a space to work with state-of-the-art equipment, and we can also provide that. So how do we work? And this is a common question that's often asked. So really the first step in a company working with us is engagement. And I would encourage that either with myself or my colleagues, Kira and Carol. So companies can often ask, how do we go about a project? So really pick up the phone, email, through our website, and we can arrange a meeting. It's been quite difficult, I suppose, over the last number of weeks, but we have managed to hold online calls with companies. So really, we're trying to set up projects that over the last 2 to 3 weeks, we begin to kick off physically on site. Food companies may be directed from Enterprise Ireland to us, or we may redirect companies back to Enterprise Ireland for funding. And there is several methods where companies can attain funding, either innovation vouchers to feasibility studies or innovation partnership programs. So really, engagement with Teagasc is the first step. We build a project and then we agree and sign a contract. So we're both very clear on the body of work to be carried out. Companies can also engage with Teagasc researchers. So it may not necessarily be a piece of equipment that needs to be used. It may be a particular problem that needs solved. And at the core of all this is knowledge transfer. So from Teagasc to the client, where confidentiality and intellectual property are retained at all times. So again, the PCF Centre, it's a space for innovation, quite simple, from our test kitchen to our larger scale processing area, which you'll see in the 2 pictures here. And again, sometimes this is all a company needs, is simply a space, but we also provide all manner of equipment. So every piece of equipment imaginable in terms of processing, but with the caveat of the knowledge, expert knowledge on site with our Teagasc researchers. So we provide that training and support with companies on site when they come in. Again, within the PCF Centre, so we'll see from very simple pots and pans, most development usually starts with on a very small scale, but the added advantage within our centre is we can very quickly move to a larger scale. So we can seamlessly move from, for example, a 1 kilo batch right up to a 120 kilo batch on our larger processing machines. And really, the equipment has allowed us to do all manner of processing, from mixing, drying, chopping to emulsifying. But we also carry out real-time analysis hand in hand when we're developing a product. For example, moisture content analysis, particle size analysis, viscosity, pH analysis. These are all very important, so scientific parameters when you're developing your food product. So we have a dedicated bakery development suite on site, where companies can come in and use equipment, obviously in hand with our research team, from everything from flour milling to blending, right through to mixing and proofing. So we have key research ongoing in this area in terms of flour chemistry, and rheology, gluten-free science, and healthy and novel reformulation. So there's some key areas at the moment. We also use specialized equipment in this area. So for an interesting example I give you is acoustic energy analysis, where if you picture your cream cracker, for example, we can use a machine which applies force to that cracker, and then by actually hearing the snap of the cracker, for want of a better word, we can determine has that product taken on moisture, or is it beginning to, I suppose, degrade over time? Is the shelf life going to affect it? We also have a dedicated meat industry development suite. So really, in terms of prepared consumer food, we're looking at the next step in terms of meat, so processed meats, and within Ireland, how can we bring, I suppose, the next step after slaughter to add value to meat products? The site is well known, and our Teagasc site is world renowned for its role in meat research. So we work with companies on value-added products, smoked products, fermentation, cured meats. Companies can make burgers, sausages, salamis, minced products on site, and also seal on site. And this is the other end of the development. We do a lot of work with companies in terms of different packaging formats, modified atmosphere packaging formats with meat products. We also have a dedicated meat research laboratory on site. So one example was we can do texture analysis on meat to see key factors such as firmness, cohesiveness, and juiciness. Advanced processing technology. So this is a new emerging technologies which our researchers are currently working on, which may be incorporated into the food industry. So again, over the course of the last number of years, some of this technology has found its way into basically the food industry. One example would be UV technology for sterilization, which 20 or 30 years ago was perceived as advanced processing technology. But now if you go to a lot of sites, in particular lettuce processing, you will see UV technology being used to sterilize products. So just to give you an example of some of the pieces of technology we have on site, pulse electric field. So what this piece of equipment can do, it's a non-thermal preservation method. So it involves the use of short, very powerful electrical pulses, which can treat a food product within the unit we have on site. So essentially, we're doing a lot of research at the moment, looking around microbial inactivation and how this can have an impact on product quality and improving shelf life. We also have equipment in terms of ultrasound technology. Some people may be familiar within the industry with ultrasonic cutters, but what we're looking at this technology at the moment is inactivated microorganisms. So again, to extend shelf life, it could potentially help in the extraction of oils from products which couldn't be extracted before. Supercritical fluid extraction, again, a technology where a product can be collected, so an essential oil could potentially be extracted from a product. Cavitation, this is a unique process which just, I suppose the formation, what it creates is a formation of tiny micro bubbles, which could be used potentially to mix products, homogenize products, pasteurize products. So there's a large area of research in cavitation at the moment. And again, what we have in site are advanced filtration systems. So we're really looking at, and in particular, there's a lot of research ongoing at the moment in terms of byproducts of waste streams. So how do we use filtration to extract proteins, different enzymes from waste streams? So our food safety suite, and again, as you all well know, food safety is paramount, whether in developing a food product, or formulating, or investigating a new ingredient or process. As mentioned there, consumers are really studying their food products, and it's not just as a result of COVID-19, but they're really scrutinizing the ingredients. And we are seeing a call for healthier foods, so less salt, less sugar, less fat. Again, export, it's a key driver of food, and we do help companies try and extend the shelf life of their products while retaining quality of their products. What we're seeing coming on stream at the moment are new sustainable packaging formats, but really what we're trying to marry is having a sustainable packaging format, but also ensuring that it's food safe and that it retains the shelf life qualities of the food products. What we have within our food safety suite as well is a dedicated biocontainment suite. So just to explain what this is, it's a dedicated lab. So where a company can come in, inoculate a product, for example, with E. coli or Salmonella, and then see how their processing or change in process has an effect on that bacteria then. Sensory science. So what is sensory science is what a lot of companies do ask us. It is, in fact, a scientific discipline. How sensory science works, it's used to measure, analyze, interpret, I guess, all the characteristics of food. So using our 5 senses, sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. Product launches need sensory, and I can tell you this from experience working within the food industry, where I've sat around the table, perhaps the managing director is at the top of the table and they shake their head or give a nod and the product's approved. This is not sensory science, and this is really where we're trying to push companies to use a scientific discipline, which our researchers use. So it could be different tests, such as a descriptive test. So what's the sensory profile of the product? It could be a discrimination test. Are the products different, similar? Or it could be effective tests. Is the product liked, or which is it preferred? So we'd encourage companies to work with our team of researchers to establish the best method for sensory analysis. It's not just as simple as coming in and tasting a product. So I just want to talk you through really 3 case studies. Now they're hypothetical, but it's really an example of how within the Prepared Consumer Food Centre we can help with, I suppose, entrepreneurs, startups, SMEs, and then using our more advanced technology. So the first case study is strawberries, of which we've seen in season at the moment. So really, for example, Strawberry Farm Limited company will come to us and they want to expand their line of strawberry products. They're sick of selling their products inside the road, for example. So we will come in, sit down, our team of research will examine where or what they can do with their food products, and then we'll demonstrate our capabilities on site. So as a result of that meeting, we could decide that we're going to create a strawberry puree, dried strawberries, and strawberry jam, all very delicious products. So what we would then do is use the equipment on site. The first case would be in the terms of drying. So we'd use our freeze drying unit, and we'd also use our air drying unit on site, which are both commercially available to companies. How we would use the units then, essentially we dry out the products, so remove moisture. And a lot of you might have had muesli for your breakfast this morning. You will see a lot of freeze-dried fruits within this. So this will create a value-added product then for this company through dried strawberries. We could then look at creating a strawberry jam and a puree. And again, both very different products, but may seem quite similar, but very different processes. So we start off with recipe development in the kitchen and create different types, different recipes. Maybe the company might want a sugar-reduced jam. They might want to use different types of pectins within the jam. And again, for a puree, they might want to extend their shelf life. So we might look at different packaging formats. Is it going to be a chilled product, a frozen product? So we would then bring the product from small scale, 1 kilo batch, right up to larger scale, right up to 120 kilo. What we also will do is analysis. So bricks analysis is very important in terms of jam making, and viscosity analysis. So if this particular company is going to invest in equipment, viscosity could be quite important if they want to deposit their product. Let's say, for example, the company wanted to retain a certain size of strawberry within the jam, a 5mm piece. So then we'll work on creating a process that they can then replicate to keep this 5mm piece. And from that, then we'll move into shelf life analysis and help them conduct studies over a period of weeks and months to ensure that the product is safe for the shelf. So the second case study would be an example of a larger company coming to us with an issue in terms of caramel is the example I'd use here. So I tried to think of a product that's potentially the highest in sugar for this example. So let's say Caramel Company Limited will come to the PCF Centre and they want to reduce salt, reduce sugar and reduce fat. So that's a lot of reduction in one product. So again, we would sit down and go through the product, see what needs to be achieved with the company, and we'd carry out some background research. But really, we'd ask the questions of what do the company want to achieve in terms of taste, shelf life, colour, viscosity? Is this a new product, or are they trying to so as mimic their current product and relaunch. So what's their objective, and are they willing to compromise perhaps in terms of shelf life if salt's going to be reduced? So in this particular example, after sitting down and discussing with the company, we used the chicory root fibre. It's a commonly added ingredient in cereals and bars at the moment to help boost fibre content as well. It's also a source of inulin, which is a type of soluble fibre. So what we added that ingredient in replacement of sugar. We then reduced salt. When we reduce salt, we notice a very noticeable difference in recipe. So at this point, the company decided that instead of replacing their current product, this was going to be a different product, a different caramel product. So at that point, they didn't mind the reduction in sugar. We also then use an alternative fat, so coconut fat, to provide a balance in mouthfeel. So again, this is all happening live in a kitchen where we're tweaking ingredients, carrying out real-time sensory analysis, and also carrying out some basic analytic analysis as well. So the company then wanted to relaunch the product, so nutritional analysis was required. So the product sent up to our nutritional lab, basic nutritional was carried out, and again, if they needed to put in a claim, perhaps reduce sugar, this is all done within our lab, and that claim needs to be validated through scientific analysis. So as you see in the pictures here, how it can move quite seamlessly from test kitchen to nutritional analysis in a laboratory, then recipe scale. That particular piece of equipment there is a FireX 60-litre vessel. And then we can move on to final sensory analysis, where consumers are comparing the two products. Finally, the last example I'd like to give you is in the case of Extrusion Technology. And one of the flagship pieces of technology we have on site is a Textral twin screw extruder. So this is an R&D model machine. As you see in the picture, it's still quite large, takes up a nice bit of space, and we've got all the component equipment so companies can adapt what they'd like to do with this machine. For any of you who are not familiar with extrusion, the most basic form of extrusion is pasta, for example, where you force a mass through a die to create a shape. So essentially what this machine is doing is the same, albeit on a larger, more technical scale. So through mixing, shearing, and transfer through a barrel, which you'll see here in the picture on your right-hand side, we can create a product which is instantly cooled. So it's going through a barrel, moisture is added, and in the process of 3 or 4 seconds, the product is instantly cooked and then expands through a die at the far end. So in this particular case study, a vegan snack product was required from a larger company in Ireland, and they wanted to make this snack product derived from powder from vegetables. So again, we sit down with the company and we go through the project. What will be clear to see in this project is it's longer term. It's going to require a large amount of research before we even start. So what the company would ended up doing in this instance was creating a powder product from vegetables. It required a dedicated Teagasc researcher to sit with them. And again, 2 or 3 months research could be required in a project of this size. Again, in a large body of work, timelines are key. So we map out with the company, okay, this mightn't take 2 or 3 months, it might take a year, so that there's, I suppose, companies aren't shocked then at the end, they know the length of time a product's going to take. So for example, in this product, we analyzed the powder, which was created from the vegetables. The piece of equipment you'll see here is a mass decider, which is particle analysis equipment. And from then, trials were conducted on the extruder, which is quite a complex piece of kit and involved 2 or 3 Teagasc researchers. Different samples were put into the extruder, different feed rates, moisture content, temperatures to create a product. At the very end then, we would analyze the nutritional properties of the product. So are there any soluble, insoluble fibers, any potential antioxidant properties? So the resultant product would have a full analysis right across sensory, nutritional, and all very detailed scientific analysis which have been carried out on site. So that concludes my webinar today. I hope it was informative. If you have any questions, I'm sure myself, Carol, or Kira will be more than happy to answer them. And I hope you'll tune in to the next series over the coming weeks as well.
Thanks, Shay.
Thank you, Shay. So Kira, you're going to look at the questions that we have.
Yeah, I'll move on to to some of the questions from the participants, but feel free to monitoring it throughout. So feel free to add any others over the next few minutes while we discuss. So this question relates to access to the Prepared Consumer Food Centre. Shay, could you reiterate how that engagement happens again, or how a company, if they want to approach you or Teagasc or the Prepared Consumer Food Centre, how they do that?
Yeah, so really, if you go onto our website, I'm sure we can send on a link after. Companies, it can be as simple as picking up the phone and giving me a call, and you'll find my number or email address on the Teagasc website. And that's really how I would encourage a company to engage, either through an email, giving a brief description of what they'd like to achieve. We can then have a phone call, or if needs be, it's been quite difficult over the last number of weeks, but as things begin to open up, I would encourage a site visit, so companies can see our site, see the test kitchen, get a feel for what we can do on site. So that's really the process in opening up a project with us.
And once the work is defined, then would it be progressing to a quote and a contract? I think you referenced in your...
Yeah. The next steps, if we agree on a body of work, we'd obviously discuss it, document it, give a cost. For example, it could be as simple as using our test kitchen, which as an example is €300 a day, or a company can block book it for a week for €1,000. A company might also want to use, I suppose, the services of one of our Teagasc researchers, and we can incorporate that. I might want to use different pieces of equipment. So we build all that into a project at the start, so we're both quite clear on what's needed and the timelines involved, and then we book the company into the site then.
So if a company has an idea of what they want to do and develop, you could talk them through the necessary equipment or testing or support that can be delivered. Okay, thanks for that. There's another question here around funding, and the query is whether or not Teagasc can financially fund any of this work.
Yeah, do you want me to take that one, Ciara?
Yeah. I think you referred to it again in terms of alternative forms of funding, but I suppose the bottom line is we don't fund. We're not a financial funding agency, but Shay, I'll let you elaborate on what you'd touched on already.
Yeah, just what you said, Ciara, we're not a funding agency. We're the science behind food research in Ireland more so. But what I would encourage companies is to engage with Enterprise Ireland, for example. So over 50% of the companies we engage with at the moment have some degree of funding attained through Enterprise Ireland. It can be as simple as an innovation voucher, or there's larger scale innovation partnerships which are ongoing over a few years. So to really engage with even your local enterprise office as well to get that ball rolling. Look, some companies like to come to us and pay up front for services. And to be honest, we are very competitive. And that's one thing I would say, compared to, I suppose, commercial entities throughout Europe. We're set up to support food industries first and foremost.
Yeah. The basis of the investment from the Department of Ag was that there would be a centre available for prepared consumer food companies across the island. So another question here in relation to bringing my own equipment on site. So to link in with the processes that are available within or on site in Ashtown, is it feasible to do that for a company to bring an element of their own process or a piece of equipment to tie in with the development work?
Yeah, what we'd see, once it's not a full production line, I'm sure we can work with companies. But yeah, what we do is smaller piece of equipment. So a company might have a particular mixer, for example, or they might have a particular piece of analysis equipment. So recently we facilitated a company where they had a small sealing machine, and we're quite easy to fit that in on site. But really, I suppose on the flip side of that, the investment has allowed us to invest really in all manner of equipment. So there's not too much we don't have on site already, but if a company did have a very specific piece of equipment, we could facilitate them short term in having it on site.
Okay. And in terms of the packaging suite you referred to, Shay, there's a question here which asks what type of packaging formats can be facilitated?
Yeah. So within our packaging suite, and this is something we looked at the start before we acquired any equipment, we looked at the most used pieces of packaging. So we have a tray sealer, a semi-automatic tray sealer, which is used quite widely. A lot of products in the meat category in particular. This also allows for modified atmosphere packaging. We also have a small sealing machine, which companies can deposit fluid or paste, quite tight products. We have a thermoformer, which will form a pack, a plastic pack, and seal it. A vertical fill machine, which if you think to a lot of crisp type products, we can seal products. And we have a horizontal fill machine, which a lot of snack and confectionery products are used. We also have a small induction sealer as well, which companies. So really, it's quite a varied range of products. Again, if a company is using a bespoke type of pack, so example, a tray sealer, we have a number of heads that can work, let's say D2 head, but we can seal a product and do basic analysis or kick off the project really with that type, and then a company might want to move to a different size pack, bespoke to them. Companies engagement, and again we can give contacts to a number of packaging suppliers, but really to engage with them and figure out what they want, what suits their product, what sort of shelf life do they need. Are they moving towards compostable or biodegradable packaging? And then we can I suppose work as a bridge in between then and linking the company with the packaging supplier. I'd encourage really companies to look at sourcing the films and trays themselves, but work with us to make sure that they fit our product if they want to do some initial testing.
Okay, there's another question here in relation to the packaging formats. Does the induction sealer cover stand-up die packs as well? Are you aware of that?
We have a die pack sealer as well. So if it's as simple as the Ziploc, let's say the top of a bag, we can seal those as well. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And I'll move on to the next question. This one is in relation to shelf life extension. So what supports can be provided by the Prepared Consumer Food Centre in relation to shelf life extension of a product?
Well, really, when a company asks us to look at a project on shelf life extension, we get quite detailed at the start. So we break down the product itself, what is within it, what market is it for export, and very quickly we can establish, okay, if let's say for a meat product that has an initial 14-day shelf life, if a company wants to get 6 months, it's not realistic. So we can quite quickly determine through our knowledge on site what's feasible with a product. Now, sometimes it's a bit of give and take. We might need to add perhaps a more expensive pack, or might need to add a gas mixture to a modified atmosphere packaging. So a company might have to invest in that technology, or we might need to tweak ingredients. So we might need to add stabilizers or ingredients to a product to help extend the shelf life. So really, it's a whole investigation into what a company actually needs and wants to achieve. But sometimes there is a lot of give and take. So it's really kicking off what a company wants and then moving forward into the actual microbiological studies then. I know, Ciara, a lot of questions or something we're asked a lot in terms of accelerated shelf life studies. Quite a difficult area, really. You can't speed up a microbiological test. It's simply, and if you look at the FSI is quite a good guidance document on it. I think it's guidance document 18 in terms of shelf life extension. So we can help guide companies of how to carry out shelf life extension, but really you need to follow the legislation and guidance on it. There's no quick fix to shelf life extension.
Okay. And in terms of accreditation, in terms of laboratory accreditation, is that something, can the full and final shelf life be carried out within the Prepared Consumer Food Centre?
I suppose within Teagasc, we're not accredited labs. Now, I say that in the sense that we do very advanced studies, perhaps more so than any accredited lab in Ireland, but really that space is very competitive. And I suppose Teagasc would have taken the decision not to move within that area. There's quite a number of labs throughout the country doing accredited tests. But that being said, we can bring a company above and beyond to that point. So let's say if the final test is sent to an accredited lab, we have a very good idea at that point how the product will perform to our own labs. So some of the equipment we have on site in terms of nutrition analysis and microanalysis, you will not find in our lab in Ireland. So it's
I suppose it minimises then the amount of testing that needs to be done in a commercial lab if you've done the R&D piece and the extension piece with ourselves.
It's the final step then, yeah.
Okay. There's another question here with regards to storing of product. So can I store raw ingredients or finished product within the prepared consumer food centre?
I suppose like we're quite limited on space at times, but really what we would do with a company is, and it's all about planning. That's something when we discuss a project with a company, let's say for example with a company needs to process 0.5 ton of product in a week. So we set up the project in such a way that ingredient is coming to us either the week beforehand or on the first day. We do have space to store. We have a few pallet spaces, but we try and process that product within that time frame. So we don't allow, we're an R&D facility. We don't allow for long-term storage of final products or ingredients, but we would dedicate our area in such a way that a company, when they're coming in, the products there, they can process and they can then bring it away all in a space of a week or 2 weeks. So that's how we usually work with companies.
Ciara, are there many questions still left? We just might be finishing up now in the next.
Okay, one more question here, if that's okay. So there's a query here about scaling ingredients. How would I scale my ingredients, or how could you assist in that?
Really, and it's quite simple. We've a whiteboard set up in the test kitchen. So what we do when a company develops, let's say if it's a brand new product, we carried out work in terms of developing that recipe, and then we convert it to a percentage, and then quite simply work up then from a 1 kilo, 2 kilo batch. So a lot of our equipment within the test kitchen is 1-2 kilo mixes. Perhaps a company might want to do several trials, tweaking ingredients. So once we're happy with that recipe, then we move forward to scale up. The key part of scale up is consistency, and we would work, it's an educational piece as well. So what I would work with a lot of companies in terms of standard operating procedures. So if you go to replicate your product, you can keep it the same time after time after time. So that's what we work, settings, documenting settings, taking pictures, and then producing a full report at the end. So a company mightn't produce that product again for a number of weeks, but when they do go to a co-packer or back to their own facility, they know what settings, what equipment works for their product. And that's a key part that some companies forget. It's the process is key, not necessarily the ingredient sometimes.
Okay, thanks very much, Shay.
Great.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for that. And as you said, the recording will be available afterwards, and our series continues in 2 weeks' time. So we're going to look at sensory analysis and what sensory analysis can do for you. So Shay, thanks a million. Ciara, thank you. And we log off. Okay, bye.
Bye now.